one of the most brutally honest people that I know. Always checks me on my bullshit. One of the
You're welcome, world.
Yeah, one of the very few people to do so. And I have to actually thank you for pushing me, nudging me over the edge to start this pod, because I've been talking about, I want to start a podcast. I've been wanting to do it for years, and you're like, just fucking do it. So I was like, okay, so I'm just fucking doing it. And now I'm, episode 14, happy to have you in here. And I want to know, obviously you have a very public persona, but I want to know, how do you go from high school dropout to badass entrepreneur?
I think the badass was before the high school dropout. Actually, there's a picture my mom sent me. I was like 3, and I have a phone in my hand, like a Corvette phone, the old timey, and I'm like looking at the phone sideways, and I'm like, when they say nature versus nurture,
making deals.
Go with nature. Contrary to what people who don't know me very well think, as I'm actually really sensitive and really soft and not this aggressive bullshit calling type of person. And I think the go after it was learned behavior. So daughter of immigrants, very loving family, very affectionate family. I grew up in a religious home, and it wasn't until I went to grade school where I experienced people being mean to you for reasons you don't understand. And I traced this back in therapy. So
well, this is like therapy, so let's go.
Girls were mean to me, and I didn't quite understand it. And then boys would play sports with me if I was good at sports. So fortunately, unfortunately, I learned at a very young age to adapt and to provide value in order to belong. So I knew that if I could hit my jump shot, I would have something to do during recess, rather than like sitting in my little dress that my mom made me, like feeling sad about, why don't the girls like me?
So wait,
so
that's how you learned how to play in the boys' world then? You literally learned how to play in their world.
Yes, and I didn't really quite understand it in that way. And then you look at my experiences in life, having a sense of awareness at a young age, but not aware enough to like give it a label. But I just understood how to belong or how to be of value. And it's something I'm actually trying to shake, because now, like one of my clients last week, I jump around a lot in storytelling. One of my clients last week, it was after a pretty tough workout, and I was there with the trainers because obviously I do the nutrition side. And he was gassed, and I'm sitting sideline quiet because it's not my time, it's the training time. And he looks up and we make eye contact. So I give him like this encouraging thumbs up, and he just says, Mary, you know what? I love having you here for these sessions. I love your energy. Like you bring something to the room. And like, I almost wanted to start crying, because it's really like, wait, you want me here even though I'm not actively doing something to provide value? So I'm trying to understand that I don't have to do things in order to belong in the room. Anyways, so that badassness that people see is actually around, I'm not the most talented, I'm not the prettiest, I'm not the smartest, but I will do my best to provide the most value in the room, so I won't be forgotten.
Well, you said it's a learned behavior. So where did you learn it, and what gives you that drive, though?
I think the practice was learned. I think the response was innate. It's like a survival response. And we've sort of talked about this before. Mortality is a really great motivator for me. The idea that we're going to die. People I love have died. More people I love are going to die. And so I'm going to go after what I can to its fullest potential and speak truth and put myself out there. And if there's somebody that I can like point out their truth, I will.
Does having that very strict religious upbringing affect your views on mortality?
No, being Orthodox, it's really spiritual and mystical more so than other faiths that I learned about. Growing up, we were encouraged to learn about other religions and other faiths to have a sense of understanding. And Orthodox, Coptic Orthodox, it's focused more on all the good you can do rather than all the bad you should avoid.
My upbringing of Catholicism.
Yeah, I didn't understand when I started learning about Catholicism. I'm like, this is really dark and heavy, you guys.
Yeah. That's why I say I'm a recovering Catholic. I wish we had mysticism. It was all shame and guilt.
Well, it's just crazy to go to Egypt and to be able to walk the path and visit things that you were learning in Sunday school. And I've been able to witness things I cannot explain. I've been able to hold things that I'm like, how is this doing? And it's really weird. And there's just some things you just, it's not that you don't question it, you just let it be magic.
I question everything. That's the worst. I wish I could that's why I'm the worst, especially with Christmas right around the corner. I'm the worst with surprises and being surprised and like.
Oh, really?
And magic. I should. Okay, so.
Are you the worst at receiving surprises? Do you make it so fucking difficult?
You did give me multiple presents in the last couple of weeks to cheer me up. One to cheer me up, and one for my birthday. And you always roll deep with like a giant bone-in ribeye and some other deliciousness that you've whipped up.
My love language. But you make it so fucking difficult that you're almost resentful. Like, I will fucking do this for you. You will receive it.
I don't know what maybe it's the weird guilty Catholic upbringing, but I have a weird way. I'm such a giver that I have such a problem receiving love that I'm like, I'll give people the stiff arm. So as you know, from the terrible gift receiver that I am.
People that are weirded out by generosity do tend to weird me out.
Thanks. No, you're incredibly generous and you're incredibly kind. That's why it is funny that, I mean, I started the interview off saying you are such a badass, but you have such an incredible softness as well, and you are insanely loving. And I think that's also what makes you an incredible. I'm
well-rounded.
Well, no, it's a good asset for your client as well. Like you said, like your recent client who was saying just having you on the sideline gives them motivation and inspiration, and you're just kind of that driving force. Kind of going back to what you do on a daily basis. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. Why is diet not more in the forefront of people's minds right now?
Yeah, which is unfortunate, because the best line of defense against any disease is what you are doing with diet, nutrition, exercise, and supplementation. So it's like you can't avoid getting sick, but you can make sure that you fortify in order to be able to kick its ass when it happens. And I'm starting to see little bits from the CDC and little bits from the government around promoting that kind of stuff. But I think this has been a great awakening for a lot of people, and the opportunity for there to be finally truly a health revolution if we don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
If we don't keep looking for the Band-Aids.
You have Paleo Chef in your name. Obviously, paleo has been one of those terms that has just been bastardized, like every other diet. I feel like, especially something that's a very popular diet, has been taken and manipulated and just really, really removed from what its original intent was. What is your go-to way of eating now? And would you still call yourself a paleo person?
So I believe in paleo, not paleo, but paleo. And that what works for me may not work for you, and what works today may not work in 6 months. So what I do with my clients and what sets me apart from, so I sit in this interesting intersection. I'm not classically trained as a chef. You would crush me at anything detailed, any technique, any efficiencies. You would crush me at that. But then also not a classic nutritionist, and I sit heavily in science, but also wanting the food to be something that takes you back home and that you enjoy. So for clients to work with me, we have to initially do this gut reset that kind of removes all the noise for a week. And then you have to do a stool panel, a cheek swab, and blood test. And we continue to redo those tests every 6 to 8 weeks and make tweaks to the diet. Obviously, these are elite athletes. This is not something that's reasonable for your average person, but a person can do that once a year, twice a year. I will do that twice a year. I have a pituitary tumor that I'm monitoring, so my hormones change quite a bit. And so some days I am very, very strict paleo the way it was meant to be, and other times, you know, I'm including oatmeal and like I drink scotch, and people are like, alcohol's not paleo. I'm like, neither is the internet.
Neither are bars or any of the, or bacon. None of that stuff existed. That's the irony.
But I do think paleo still is an incredible baseline to follow. It's a great place to start. So right now I'm actually probably doing 40% protein, and it's a mix of chicken, and I'm really big on organ meat. And then the rest is leafy greens. Cruciferous are messing me up right now, and that's going to change. And I do think women should eat for their cycle as well, supporting wherever they are on cycle, and train for wherever they are on their cycle. Men have their own cycle, but I think they should eat and train for, and it changes when you're of a certain age, you know, like if you turn 40.
Wow. I knew it was coming. I knew it. Wow. I knew that was coming. Damn. I know. We're sitting here on my couch the other day and we're chatting, and I get up to go to the bathroom. You're like, well, I don't know. You go to the bathroom a lot. You may need to do a prostate check. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Look, I'm just looking out for your health, your future.
Looking out for my prostate. Thank you. No,
You're welcome.
I love that approach. And I think that there is that notion that there's a one size diet fits for everyone, right? And I think there's so many probably vegan people out there who would do well eating meat, and so many super meat heavy people that would, you know, obviously benefit from eating vegetables. And I also love that you said, even if I set a diet for my client now, and this is something that everybody should probably listen to, it's not going to be that way forever. You have to listen to your body, and you have to get that feedback to understand what changes need to be made. And I wish that people made better effort to do that.
Yeah, but that's the word there, is effort. People don't want effort. People want somebody with a platform and a new diet book to tell them that this is the golden ticket and to follow only this. And people don't understand that effort actually attracts results.
Well, I mean, look at the way we receive our news. Look at the way we're influenced by elections. I mean, we just go, okay, spoon feed me, and just give me.
If I do a diet book, it's called the Common Sense Diet, which is not sexy, and it probably won't sell.
Actually, I think that would work. Trademark the book. Trademark the book right now. So wait. So when did the obsession with human performance happen?
Obsession with what? You broke up.
What started your obsession with human performance? Because this goes far beyond just, you know, eating for everyday life. Now you're finely tuning athletes to get another couple percentages out of their tank.
I think there's multiple responses to that obsession. Okay, so sick, short version is sick from 2nd grade to 24. I was the sick kid, and migraines to the point where I would pass out on my own vomit, hormone issues, skin issues. Doctors didn't know what was wrong, so I decided at a very young age, I want to say like 6th grade, I was like, if I'm going to have to be in this much pain, please God, make sure somebody somewhere else is suffering less. Like, that's the only thing that I could say or do or think about in order to understand that this might be my baseline. And I didn't want it to get in the way of my livelihood. So I still played sports, and I would be sidelined with a head wrap because my migraines would affect my eyesight. And then I would take the head wrap off, go do a couple plays, look at my coach. She'd be like, okay, she's about to go down. Let's take her out. And I really just accepted that as my baseline. And I always thought, you know, I am kind of a badass. I do know how to endure and push on and show up, and imagine if I didn't feel like this, how much more I could accomplish. So that was always in my mind. And then this like went into my 20s. And so then I was like the sick girlfriend, which was really frustrating. You date people who are like, oh, you have a headache again. And I have one awful memory of like, again, I will throw up until I pass out. And I knew I was going to have one of those moments where I was going to collapse. And I'd ask the person I was dating, like, can you take me to the ER? It's going to be bad. And he's like, it's just a headache. And I'm like, no, this is going to be really, really bad. And was dismissed. And I remember coming through the hallway and us making eye contact and being like, it's happening. And he's like, what? And he said, I just looked like Gumby. I just fell to the ground.
Whoa.
And my roommate, who's one of my best friends, came out of the room and was like, why did you take her to the hospital? And they have to ship me off to the hospital. And that was so frustrating to me because I still wanted to show up. I didn't want to leave parties early. I didn't want to be at my desk at work with sunglasses. And it wasn't until my last ER visit that I had this epiphany that I'm so type A and take charge everywhere, but I was letting doctors give me all these shitty diagnoses and medications that weren't really helping or masking. But a very dramatic exit to the ER, my last visit for my migraines, and dove into, okay, I geek out everywhere else. How can I geek out on this and reverse engineer a migraine? What is actually happening biologically? Okay, now what is happening chemically? Okay, what impacts those chemicals? Okay, what synergistically can be done to alter those chemicals? And as I was doing that, you find the mitochondria being the center of your ecosystem. I have this no duh moment where I'm like, okay, you rewrote the words to a Beastie Boys song with your lab partner in high school about the mitochondria function for your for your presentation. Got to fight for your right to ATP.
Wow.
And I'm like, I was already on it. And then in 7th grade, I won first in the nation on a technical paper about how ADHD was actually a chemical imbalance and it was the disease of the decade and all you need to do. And I created this little prototype of a candy bar that had all these different supplements and vitamins for kids. I'm like, instead of getting Adderall. So I was already on this path. And I found this TED Talk by Dr. Terry Walls, changed my life. She was talking about the mitochondria, and I first changed my diet. And 3 months into that, all those symptoms went away, and I woke up for the first time without a headache. And I thought it was a trick. I was like,
what did you do specifically? What were the things you did to alter your diet?
remove gluten, dairy, and soy initially. And then I received a kit where I outsourced my own lab work because it wasn't covered by insurance. And I was definitely expecting to be gluten intolerant. I didn't expect it to come back as full-blown celiac, intolerant to casein and soy. And I was pumped. I was like, wait, so all I need to do is not eat these things and I will feel better. Done, no problem. And somebody at work noticed that I was feeling better. And I mean, everyone noticed I was feeling better, but one particular person, we were going over numbers, was like, you know, you've always been a really positive person and you've pushed through pain, but it's different now. Like you have vibrancy, your eyes are bright, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, oh, I'm eating this thing called the Paleo Diet. Paleo was just becoming popular at the time.
What year is this?
It was the Giants won in 2010, 2011, maybe 12.
Such a girl from the Bay. I love it.
Yeah, there's a very, very pivotal time of like the Giants winning the World Series, one of the best guys I ever dated dumping me on the Golden Gate Bridge, and me running into him shortly after that, after my diagnosis. And the first thing I said to him in Trader Joe's was like, oh my God, I have celiac disease. All those times I couldn't hang out. He's like, cool, Mary. And I'm like, well, that's right. We're not homies anymore. Okay. So I didn't want to say 2011, 2012 maybe. And saying paleo was much easier than saying I don't eat gluten, dairy, and soy. And he's like, well, I don't have time to cook for myself. Will you just make these things for me? And everyone knew that I enjoyed cooking before that. And I'm like, I don't cook for people. I run multi-million-dollar contracts. And he's like, well, you know, I can pay you this much as a private chef. And I was like, well, San Francisco, you can make a lot of money and still be poor. So I was very much like, all right, cool. I'll do this on the side. I'll make some money for all my fancy dresses. And 2 weeks after that, I was getting my wisdom teeth removed because they were coiled and I had to get put under. And I came to, the oral surgeon was like, I'm so excited that you're going to be my private chef. So under the influence of drugs, I had convinced myself that I was already a private chef and got 2 clients. So those 2 clients I rolled with for about 3 months. I had a nervous breakdown on 101 because my body was just too tired and I knew I had to choose one or the other. And I take the day off. I go to the ferry building with my friend and I'm in my head because there are, like I said earlier, there's some things you just can't explain, you have to accept. But in general, I dissect the fuck out of everything. My friends always say, don't mur this to death, which my hometown nickname is Mur. And I'm like, no, I'm going to mur it to death. So I have my head down, but I have my peripheral, I see a gentleman walking towards the door. And so being a gentleman at heart, I open the door for him without making full eye contact. And he goes, thank you. And I look up because he said, thank you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're welcome. And he's like, chivalry's not dead. And I'm like, neither is manners. And we had this exchange and I walk off and I'm back in my head like, am I really going to leave my corporate job to be a chef? And my friend, I just remember her still standing in the doorway. I noticed she wasn't next to me and she's in the doorway. And I'm like, Jen. And she goes, are you an idiot? Are you, like, you are so obtuse sometimes. You took the day off from work to decide if you want to be a private chef. And you opened the door, literally opened the door for Tyler Florence. How is that not a sign for you? And I'm like, oh shit. I was like in my head, I didn't realize that was him. I tweeted immediately after, like, so sorry, I didn't realize that was you. I love Wafer Taverns, da da da. And then years later, I had the opportunity to tell him, like, I don't expect you to remember this, but this moment with you was like a sign for me to leave corporate. And he goes, I remember that moment and I remember you. And I'm like, oh shit. And so that's when I left to become a private chef. And I got the website Personal Paleo Chef and paleopersonalchef.com. And again, this is the combination of timing, luck, opportunity, and follow through. I was the only person doing paleo chef stuff. So when somebody Googled it, I was the only one that was coming up. So very quickly, I got well-known people finding me because I was the only one. They kept me because I was good at it. And they kept me because I was taking this individualized approach. And in the beginning, it was a couple of tech juggernauts who wanted to like look good naked and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's easy and that's fun, but I found myself being bored with the general weight loss theme and wanting to really be able to challenge my brain and get the athletes who are already really on top of their game and making them just that much better, or getting the challenge of changing an actor's body composition for a role. And so the short version
diet isn't about looking good naked. Is that what you're saying right now? You're crushing all my dreams.
I think it's a combination, but looking good naked, barring medical conditions. I have to do all the caveats so I don't offend anybody. Barring all those asterisks, diet to look good is not that difficult, or as difficult as it is taking an ultra athlete and putting them over that edge. And that is very exciting for me. And it continues to be exciting because every athlete is different, and medical tests or the results will always change and tweaking out. And then, yeah.
And you're talking about minuscule percentages. You have people who are already the top. They're doing probably 99. They're already, set up with an insane drive, an insane work ethic, probably a pretty great diet as it is. And you're just there to get somebody that extra 1%.
Yeah. And that's challenging. You can't fuck that up.
So kind of going back to, I know you were saying all of your autoimmune diseases, you kind of skimmed over the gut thing really quick, but I know that you are super, super big proponent on gut health. You wrote a manual on it for a gut reset. Give me a brief overview of how to do a gut reset, or why we even need to do a gut reset, how to do a gut reset, and why it's critical to your health.
So the gut reset that I put out, it's the first time I've ever shared anything that I do privately with my clients. I've been very scared. So I've been doing this for 8 years. So this is not like I read a book last week and suddenly I'm doing whatever. But I was always very nervous about sharing anything I do privately with my clients, because one-on-one doesn't scare me. You could be one of the greatest athletes in the world, and some of my clients are, and I feel very confident being one-on-one with you. Sending the gut reset out to Mary Beth in Kentucky and letting her run with it by herself scares the bejeebies out of me, even though I know it's really powerful, because these things are not always comfortable. And I do care very much about the gut biome, but before you can tackle the gut biome, there needs to be a reset of the body. So maybe I named it wrong. So it's not, so step one is this reset of removing all inflammation and all noise in your body, so you understand what is really going on under the hood. So if you were to walk into, and I don't know your day-to-day diet, but if you say you're eating whatever you want and you go in to do all the tests that I just recommended, your results will be based on the crap you've been eating for the last month, the last 2 months, not really based on how is your body performing with no noise. So the 7-day reset, it's a combination of dense nutrients, calorie restriction, fasting, and it's 3 days of very specific broth that it's my wild thing bone broth is one of my recipes. And then 4 days of the same foods that are rotating that are really meant to reduce inflammation, boost energy, improve deep sleep, and a host of other things. I put it out there as a reset, and I'm receiving videos from readers who are saying things that I'm like, I can't say that it did this, but you can say that it did this. But like traumatic brain injury, they're like the symptoms I've had for years are reducing, mood elevation, control over food, like not feeling out of control around food. A couple of people around the pandemic name are like, my symptoms and my cough and recovery are happening that much faster. And I think it all has to do around removing inflammation, limiting your calories for those days so your body can focus on cell turnover and regeneration and these dense nutrients. And so I put that out into the world as, this is what every one of my clients has to do as step one before they jump into what they really want to do with their diets or the investigations. And then it's also something you can revisit at any time. And it's fascinating. I don't name drop, but the people who've talked about it publicly, like Mark Wahlberg went on Ellen and was talking about my bone broth. He's not one of my clients, but I worked with his chef, and he's like, I lost, I think, like 8 or 10 pounds of inflammation in a week. And I want to stress, it's not, you don't lose 10 pounds of fat. You're losing inflammation in your body. And that's super powerful. And
that's an amazing way to look at it, because I think people, they focus so much on the numbers and they focus on, all of this other stuff, and they don't think about getting rid of the chronic inflammation in their body. And that's the clutch thing.
Yeah. I even say in the ebook, when somebody's in it, if you got this ebook thinking you're going to lose weight, email me for a refund, because I'm not going to promote that. This is about something that's going to happen first, and a byproduct of that will likely be the composition that you are seeking.
I like that. And I love that you're not trying to make a claim. You're saying like, here is the information I have. Try it out and let me know what the result is. And I think
the sales page, I spend more time trying to talk people out of buying it on the sales page. I'm like, you're going to hate this. Day 4 is going to be shitty. You might literally be pissing out of your butt. Like, there's all these things that I'm like telling them, because part of the reset too are these journal prompts to teach people how to pay attention to their symptoms, because whatever symptoms you're having in that week are going to tell a story. An example is like, oh, I had this horrible rash on my elbow. I'm like, well, where on your cycle? That could be an overproduction of progesterone. So all those different detox, I hate that word, but all those symptoms are telling a story, and there's these journal prompts meant to have you document it, so either you can understand what your body's doing, or you can then take that to a functional doctor, which is what we do with our athletes. Is we take them through that week, we track all the great things, and we track all the not so great things, but it's all information. And I stress that throughout the ebook. Like, this is all information. It's not meant to be pleasant or comfortable. It's meant to inform you.
And so, and I know you said a major component of that is fasting. What is your, what have you, because I know that there's a difference between men fasting and women fasting. What have you learned about women and fasting?
Extended fasting. So this is 7 days, and it's 4 days is 500 calories or less. The first 3 days are really rough. Fast like that, even if you just did the first 3-day fast, have powerful benefits.
So it's more like
for
calorie
almost
restriction than just straight up fasting.
Yeah. So the next 3 days or the last 4 days are 500 calories or less. That's enough calories to feed your energy and give you those dense nutrients. Because if you're fasting the first 3 days, the next 4 days, your body is going to use whatever I'm putting into your body super optimally, which is why I do those first 3 days. And it's similar to the fasting mimicking protocol, where you're still in a fasted state, where you're still getting the benefits, but you're also still fueling. And something like a 3-day
Well,
fast.
explain that to people, because a lot of people, I know that you and I know what fasting mimicking means, but explain what that would look like for the average person.
So fasting mimicking is the perception to your body that you're still calorie restricted, but you're still feeding your brain. Essentially, you're still feeding as much as is needed. So it's 500 calories or less is that sweet spot where you're not breaking the fast and distracting your body from what it's focused on doing and healing to go into digestion. So when you're eating like a dense bar or a dense breakfast, your body has to pause and focus on that. When you're calorie restricted, you can still reap the benefits for the energy and the nutrients without getting your body to stop what it's doing to digest. Is the most lamest way I can explain it. Did that help?
No, that's good. That's good. I think.
Do you have a different description?
No, I think that's good. But I think that a lot of people, the hardest aspect of fasting for most people is the mental aspect, and just the thinking that you have to be eating and that your body is starving. And when it's not really starving, you're just not eating a meal, or you're skipping a couple meals, or you're not eating for a period. And I think it's just,
that's definitely something that my readers have talked about. Like, for some reason, it was hard, but it made me more aware of this weird false emotional tie I have to eating, or I looked at it differently, where I'm like, well, what I am eating is being used in such a powerful way. My athletes, obviously, you just tell them what to do, they do it. It's amazing. No complaining. But I didn't expect, because I don't have a history with disordered eating or any emotional ties to eating. I didn't expect that to be the feedback I was getting back. And that's pretty cool that I'm able to accidentally help some of those things.
I think
but to your question around,
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I learned a greater reverence for food through fasting as well. And I think you really appreciate that meal after you break your fast in a greater way.
How often do you fast?
I fast every day. So I do 16/8 every day. And when I do get that first meal, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so thankful for that meal. And I don't think we're just unconscious consumers. We're constantly putting food in our mouth. We're going from here to there. We really aren't sitting down and enjoying and taking time either by ourselves or with other people. We're so busy talking, or people on their phones at dinner, which drives me fucking nuts. It just set me up in a way where I'm like, wow, I had so much more gratitude towards that meal.
That's the other part, is the emotional aspect of it. I've told the story a lot. Let me answer your question first. So fasting for women, I think short fasts are really, really powerful. I do want to caution against everyday fasting or intermittent fasting for women. Mm-hmm. It's not ideal for a lot of women. It could actually have adverse effects, and this all depends on where your hormones are. And so this is, again, like, people ask me for a lot of nutrition advice, and I have to remind them, I am just a chef and I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm always working with my clients' doctors. So you should probably be working with a functional doctor to find out where your hormones are and figure out what is best for you. So I can't blanket recommend intermittent fasting for women or keto for women. I also don't want to recommend blanket keto for anyone. It's really good for short stints or to treat something more serious. So, like, I fucking hate diets, these like little buckets. What are you? I'm like, this is my world, so it's super frustrating.
I love it. You just stopped. You just stopped your rant. You were like, went from being pissed to just saying, like, you know what? I'm not even going to say anymore. But it's true. We try to
know what you love instead of bashing what you hate. I just tell myself that all the time.
It's so true. But no, I get that question all the time, especially as a chef and someone who I have experience in nutrition as well. Um, should I fast? Should I be fasting? And I was like, I don't know enough because I haven't experienced it enough. Being an advocate for women, I know myself. I know what response my body has. But that's why I really wanted to ask you, like point blank, as a woman, what do you know? Because women are obviously the people who will want to change their diet more than anyone, and they are
Right.
continually asking about, how do I fast? What's the healthy way? And I'm like, yeah, it's one of those
Right.
things you
Well,
shouldn't.
first, let's talk about why women are wanting to fast and change their body, because honestly, it's society's fault. A lot of women have really beautiful bodies, and for whatever reason right now, women are expected to have a fat ass and a flat stomach. And I'm like, this is possible naturally. So like, pick one or the other. But it is really sad that it is true. Most women are the ones that want to change their bodies, and why. And I get chasing health and chasing the fullest potential of your body, but don't get so rigid and tunnel visioned in that you're trying all these things that have really adverse long-term effects, even if the short-term gain is what you think you want. We've got to work on the emotions around it. What I was going to say a moment before is the story that I've told where I was up in Portland on a panel, only female on the panel, and everybody on the panel was all movement focused, performance focused, data centric, and I was the one around food. And the moderator asked me, and the room was professional, so it wasn't like readers, it was a whole bunch of other practitioners, chiropractors, sports therapists, all those things. The moderator said, Mary, what's the most common nutrient deficiency you see among all of your athletes? And I was in some headspace, and I'm like, look, I know you want me to tell you it's like vitamin D or magnesium or whatever, but the most common deficiency I see among all my clients is compassion, physical touch, and connection. And it doesn't matter what I feed them. If those things aren't taken care of, they're not going to optimally use the food that I'm giving them. And then I like came out of that response for a second. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And two people burst into tears in the audience. And then afterwards, people were coming up to me like, I wasn't expecting that. And that's so true. And I felt my body release a little bit when you said that. And it's the truth. Like, I want people to understand the emotional side of why they're eating the way that they're eating, moving the way that they're moving, and living the way that they're living. And it's always interesting to me when, again, I don't think I'm that incredible of a cook, and my clients can eat anywhere they want in the world, and they will always say, like, I remember that one meal and I dream about it, or like, your meals always have so much intention to them. And part of that has to do with, even if I'm having a bad personal life, before I start cooking, I like check myself, say a little prayer, because I know that energy is important, from where the food source to how I'm cooking it to what music's playing, and then making sure they're in the best headspace when they're going to consume that meal.
That is a beautiful sentiment. And
If you didn't know I was this soft.
no, I mean, it is incredible, because its intention is huge. What other, obviously you said you'll kind of stop and do a reset mentally and spiritually before you cook for someone, because you don't want to transfer that energy. What is another process that you go through every day to kind of just have awareness and have that grounding?
I cry a lot.
Do you meditate? I know you're a big sauna fan.
Yeah, I sauna. Meditate it's not every day, unfortunately, but I take a moment. So meditation has many forms. So whether it's boxing, tennis, going for a walk, something where I'm away from my phone, I'm using my body, I'm breathing. I forget to breathe a lot. And I'm not joking, like crying, especially, this has been a hard year. And outside of this year, whether I like it or not, I'm who a lot of people call for advice or to vent to. And it's a lot to carry in. I don't really have a lot of places to place my grievances. Kind of freaks people out when I'm showing weakness. They're like, what? We don't know what to do with this. Mary's supposed to be a rock. And if I don't allow myself the space to be kind to myself and soft with myself, then I can't show up for my clients. So I weep a lot, or sometimes it happens in Whole Foods a lot. I'll just be in Whole Foods and my eyes will start leaking, and I'm like, you know what? Just let it leak. And it's not like a sob. It's very much like I visualize all the tension and anxiety in those tears. And I'm like, you just need to just come out of my body.
I like a good cry. I'm probably due for one. What are 3 things that like normal everyday people can just add to their life or their diet or their routine that can greatly enhance just day-to-day performance?
That depends. Didn't we just talk about individualized? Baby, were you not here?
I know, but there has to be some broad strokes. There are definite broad strokes that work for everybody. So
Unfortunately, it's not exciting. It's hydrate. It's sleep is the most underrated performance enhancing drug. Like sleep across all studies is always the thing. Prioritize sleep. And expressing gratitude, chewing your food thoroughly. These are not sexy things. Like until you're doing those things first, it's like,
don't worry
okay,
about
I'm going to tell you.
Don't worry about supplements.
Like, and yeah, you have to do those because obviously I have my like MVPs of 2021 or 2020. I'm like, can we just get to 2021, please? Of 2020. So ashwagandha, I absolutely love as a way to combat stress. I will take therapeutic doses at times, but having that in your diet every day will allow you to better tackle stress in your day and allow you to get better sleep. Flaxseed oil is something that I take every single day. It's very powerful. It's very necessary right now with what we're going through. And I could go on a list of things. There's also a whole page on them in my ebook.
Shout out to the ebook, which I'll definitely put a link to everybody to grab.
Also, this information's for free on my Instagram. I post all the stuff all the time. But if you're not doing the other things first, you're wasting money. So it's like if you're spending time with anybody right now, honestly, taking a nap in somebody's arms is super powerful right now, especially the year that we've been having. Trying to prioritize sleep. Honestly, people are really obsessed with digestive enzymes. I'm like, do you chew your food enough first? I posted a video of me just chewing for 30 seconds. I'm like, this is how much you need to chew before you swallow your food, before you approach digestive enzyme.
So bad about that. I think I'm guilty of that one. The food chewing thing. It's from being in the kitchen and not having time to do anything and just shoving food in your mouth and swallowing it.
Yeah. I'm really bad at I stand when I eat and I'm like, what are you doing? And then I like, even if I'm no chair, I'll just sit on the floor so I have the act of sitting. And there's other things I talk about, like when you wake up in the morning, there's this quote I read when I was a kid. Every morning I am surprised when I wake up. I'm surprised because I woke up. And it's like, oh shit, again. So I get up, and something my grandmother did and my mom did is the first thing we do is open a window and let fresh air in. And that just kind of wakes up the body. Then I go into whatever that routine will be for the day because it varies. So it's hard to say like the 3 things because I think most people neglect the basics, the foundation, and want to reach for something else. But I think I did a couple of.
No, I love that. So going back to kind of superfood supplements, how did you come up with your amazing fat fudge?
This is an accident, as all great things are. So I used to love goo packets. You know, those goo packs, those gel packs. I'm a little bit of a square. So we'd go to Vegas, my friends would be lining up lines of Coke, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to raise you with my goo packet. High on life. And then going paleo, I realized those are not ideal for my body. And I wanted to.
Cocaine is paleo, though. Is cocaine paleo?
I've heard that it is.
Of course.
I've never tried it, and I have no desires to. And I was doing some consulting for the Oracle sailing team when I had first started as paleo chef, and they needed food on the water. I'm like, man, I wish I could make a replacement to goo packets. But the best I could come up with at the time was blending chia seeds down to a powder form so that it could then absorb whatever supplements I wanted to put in there. But I wasn't happy with that. It felt too sterile to me. But in the back of my head, I'm like, this is something that I want to mess with, not to make a product, just for my clients. And so I made this coffee called that I jokingly called Unicorn Fuel. And it was a bunch of spices that work synergistically really well together. And it was like maca, turmeric, cayenne, a little tahini, and be careful what you say on the internet, because it went viral and it was voted #2 best coffee hack of 2016 in some magazines. And it had only been around for a year. And people were measuring out the contents and putting it in this container, and they called it unicorn dust, so they would easily be able to pour. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. So I had one of those on my countertop. And then there is this dessert in the Middle East called halawa, is how we say it in Egypt. I think it's halwa everywhere else. Yeah, halwa.
That's how they say it. It's Hebrew. Halva.
It even reminded me of the guy in Men in Black. Halwa. The guy that has the alien inside of him.
Sugar water. That's what he said.
Or halawa in Egypt. And it's very fickle. You have to get the honey to the right temperature before you stir in the tahini, and it's just those ingredients. And I was multitasking. I missed my mark on being able to get that right texture once you put it in a cold climate for 36 hours. I'm like, this is going to be fudge. So I took the ingredients from the unicorn fuel, the dust, and like threw it in there and just threw it in the freezer to make myself a whatever fudge. So the next day I'm like eating the fudge, I'm biting through it. And I'm like, this is really good. And I'm like, wait, if I mess with the measurements, it now goes from a treat to something more functional. I just made functional fudge. So boring. And started giving that to my clients. They were giving me crazy feedback about PRs on the field. One musician's like, I had this most insane writing session after this. And that recipe went viral. And people were like, you need to make this into a product. They were putting it in little sandwich baggies and taking it on ultra runs. And I was like, oh, wow. So I didn't know what I was doing. I put on a unicorn head on Periscope, RIP. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. You guys want this to be a product. If there's 50 orders available right now, 12 packs, you order it, I'll figure out how to do it. And in an hour, that sold out. And it wasn't that it sold out in an hour. It was when I saw who bought it. People that I didn't realize were following my work that I respect. And I'm like, can't fuck it up now. Because they're watching.
Give me the name drop. Now you can name drop. Give me the name drop, because I know they're good names.
No, I will not. Because there's some of them that I still don't know personally that I'm like, and sometimes I'll go check if they're still following me. Have I said anything stupid in the last 5 years that made them
I think Tim Ferriss was one of them, no?
No, I met Tim Ferriss a different way.
Okay. Well, Joe Rogan was definitely
way to like drop one in there.
I mean, no, but I love your approach is actually very much from your old tech world, where it was very kind of open source and getting the feedback from everybody else. And you're like, here's the thing that I'm doing, you guys can do it. And then it naturally kind of came back into being a CPG, which is funny when normally people are like, this is the recipe, it's very secret, you can't do anything about it. It was actually probably helpful to get that feedback and that assurance from the outside world.
Also, having done it that way, when 2 large companies tried to take my product and make it their own, I felt like the Beyonce of paleo for the day, because I didn't have to do much. My audience was like, you unscrupulous fucks, we watched your hand pack these yourself. And they had to concede. And there's offshoots. There's like, I won't name the company names, but there's companies that took my recipe and didn't really change the name or the branding and try to launch too. And there's an amazing quote by Jimi Hendrix, maybe. I've been copied so well, they've copied my mistakes. And the original recipe has been modified. The original recipe is still public, but it's been modified to be better. And these people copied the mistakes of that and didn't learn in their production process. So when people send me my copycats, they taste terrible. And I'm like, yeah, fucking go with that.
I love that. And like you said, there are speaking of mistakes, trials and tribulations. What is something that you learned about yourself from starting this business?
something I was reminded of is that because of my life experiences, good, bad, tragic, that my gut reaction is usually the right one. And that just because somebody is more successful than me, makes more money than me, their advice will be detrimental to my business. And I made that mistake by letting a particular advisor, two advisors, make some really poor choices. And had I just had more confidence in what it is that I thought was the better choice, I could have avoided that. And I had a call with a former COO of a company that sold for $500 million. And I'm very transparent about my fuck ups. And I'm like, this is where I fucked up and and I almost lost the business. And I should have done this, I should have done that. And I'm like, what do you think I should do? He's like, honestly, you are doing everything right. Those are just circumstances that suck. And I'm so amazed that you learned this challenge with a few $100,000. We learned this challenge 10 years in with millions and millions of dollars. And honestly, there's, listening to your story and the choices you made for better or worse, he was like, you're doing it all right. And you gotta stop letting people who haven't built a business the way that you did or lived your life or have the skin in the game that you have deter you from your gut choices. And I'm like, can you call me every day? Tell me I'm making the right choices.
You won't even, speaking of skin in the game, you won't even let me give you money. You won't let me invest. Just trying to do it all yourself.
I just want your company. But you're super weird about anyone that actually gives a damn. So
like, I want your company. I don't want you in my company.
Well, that's part of it, right? You have to like really learn as much as you can about someone before you like let them just get into the business.
Fair enough.
Earn it.
Fair enough. What drives you every day?
I want to take care of my family. And
what have you learned? Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, I guess that a lot of people run with whatever they want with the rest of that. Go ahead.
What is one thing that you learned about yourself in 2020?
I used to think I'm a soloist. I've been single my adult life. I'm the rock for a lot of people in my life. And I used to think that was an active choice. And in some ways it is. But I also learned that I'm not that at all. I'm actually a really incredible person to have in people's lives and have them in my life. So whether it's spending time with the friends whose relationships have gotten a lot closer during this time, I'm like, wow, when the option to spend time with people is taken away from you, you realize for real, like if I'm over here, like this is too much alone time.